Hey everyone, Rob B here with Rob D. Would you like higher rents? Better tenants who stay for longer? Of course you do. So today we're going to give you 7 tips that we've taken from the build to rent industry that you can implement to achieve just that.
Welcome to the Property Podcast. It's that time of the week when we step away from advising a multi-million pound property fund, which you can learn about at portfolio.co.uk, and putting together hundreds of deals a year for our clients, which you can learn about at propertyhub.net/invest, and bring you some of the knowledge we've gained along the way for free. If you don't already subscribe to the podcast, then make sure you're doing it. It's free. You can hit the little plus button on Apple Podcasts, or you can hit follow on Spotify. And once you've done that, carry on listening to this week's episode, because in 20 minutes time, you will have at least one idea, probably more, for something that you can do to make yourself a better, more profitable investor.
Right, before we get into the main segment of this show, a huge thank you to everyone who supported our crowdfund campaign. It has got off to an incredible start. Within 2 hours, it smashed through its target. We smashed through it. It's incredible. Then, on the same day, the first day, we went through £1 million. That's £1 million raised on the first day. That is an incredible result from our community. It's still only available to those who pre-registered. And to do that on just the pre-registered group is phenomenal. Now, Rob and I are going to have to sit down and decide, when we want to call this and when it's going to stop. And that's a decision we'll be making soon. But in the meantime, just thank you to everyone who's got behind it, whether you put a small amount in, a large amount in. The fact that you just join us on this journey moving forward now, really motivates us. We're very motivated people, as you can probably gather from the podcast. But having so many people go on this journey with us motivates us even more. So a huge thank you. Time for a quick bit of news and an interesting article from Rightmove. And it lists the top 10 areas for the fastest place to sell your property right now. So where are the fastest selling markets? Well, if I gave you 5 guesses, I don't think you'd pick number 1. I wouldn't have picked number 1. Maybe unless you live in this area, of course. And the number 1 area for selling your home in the fastest time possible is Falkirk, with 22 days. In fact, Scotland is the best area for the fastest selling properties. So if you want to sell your property quickly, Scotland is the place to be. The longest, maybe no surprise to podcast listeners, is London. But something that's interesting in this article is a note on the top 5 areas where it's taken the longest. And 4 of those 5 areas are coastal areas, so the likes of Dorset and Devon. And it's those places that accelerated the most when COVID kicked in. So during the pandemic and after the pandemic, we had this rush to the coast. But now that trend is reversing and those areas are struggling. Something that Rob D has talked about on the pod and on the YouTube channel, that these areas may suffer. And here it is in the data. So this link will be in our show notes if you want to check out the full table of the top and the bottom performers. But some interesting data there from Rightmove.
The build-to-rent sector is getting bigger and bigger. Many town centres are seeing super impressive new developments springing up with all kinds of crazy amenities. It's really raising the bar for what tenants can expect. Now, as an individual landlord, you could feel threatened by that. You could worry that you're going to get pushed out. There's not going to be a place for you. But actually, we believe there are lots of ideas that you can steal from the build-to-rent sector to make your own property investments even more successful. And it's not something you can just ignore. If you stand still while everything else improves, you will get left behind. But in this episode, we're going to run through 7 things that are the norm for build to rent, but very few individual landlords do. So if you take even 1 or 2 of these ideas and you start applying them, you'll immediately be offering more value and a better experience, which means more choice and potentially higher rents. So Rob, 7 ideas coming up. What's first on the list?
So number 1, let's get straight into it. Accept pets. Landlords being more open to pets is a trend that's moved in a positive direction. And more landlords, it seems, at least anecdotally to me, are more willing to take pets now than they were even just a few years ago. But many still don't. And maybe you have really good reasons for not doing that. But by rejecting tenants with pets means that you are closing yourself off to a potentially great tenant. Not only a tenant that will pay the top whack for their rent, but also may potentially be more inclined to stay longer as well. And who wouldn't want that? Now, the obvious concern for landlords around pets is wear and tear. But some pets you don't need to worry about. So let's deal with the obvious. You don't need to be shaking in your boots over a goldfish. A hamster and a gerbil are probably safe as well. and then you level up to a rabbit, and you're probably okay. But the pets that landlords are normally most wary of are cats and dogs. But lots of people have cats and dogs. But also lots of people have well-behaved cats and dogs. So a way to get over your fear, accept pets and get better tenants, is to interview the tenant if you're a more hands-on landlord, and also get them to bring their pet with them and just look at their behaviour of that pet. If it's a dog, will it sit nicely next to the owner, or is it off trying to wrestle with your sofa? It's probably going to be somewhere in between, but you're going to get a sense of that pet's behaviour from that. Now, Rob and I don't do this because we're not hands-on, but we do both accept pets in our properties. And that's because we know most of the time it's fine, and our experience has been a good experience. But if you want to get on board with this, open yourself up to more tenants, but are still nervous and you're not hands-on, well, there is pet insurance for landlords as well, which protects you against damage. That could be a way for you to access this market, but also help you sleep at night as well. So number 1, accept pets. Rob, what's number 2 on our list?
Well, another aspect of build-to-rent that's very appealing to tenants is flexible tenancies. Some build-to-rent developments allow you to move in for as little as 2 or 3 months. And of course, they're very happy for you to stay for years. And of course, as a tenant, you'd have no reason to believe that you wouldn't be able to stay for years because there's no chance that the owner's suddenly going to want to move back in themselves or sell it. So how can you replicate this? Well, in terms of short tenancies, maybe you can. Maybe by charging a higher rent, you can accommodate people who only want to stay a few months. Maybe some of the time they'll end up staying on longer anyway. But maybe you can't do that. That is harder. But you can reassure tenants about their ability to stay long term. You'll probably still want to issue tenancy agreements on a year-to-year basis or just leave it rolling rather than committing yourself to a multi-year tenancy. But what you can do is make it very clear that you're happy for them to stay long term, that you are a professional landlord. This isn't just somewhere that you've ended up renting out through circumstances because you had to move for work or you had an extra kid and you couldn't sell it. This is what you do. You have no plans to sell and you're very happy for them to make this their home for years to come. This is one of those advantages of self-management. Very difficult to pull this off if you use a letting agent. If you're listening and you have got a way that you do convey this, even though you use a letting agent, then do let us know because I'm really keen to hear it. I think that'd be very valuable. But if you are self-managing, make use of that. Build that relationship and get that point across. Because renters know how bad the renting experience can be, and they're mostly not going to move on a whim. So if you can show them a good experience and tell them that they can relax because they can stay for as long as they want to, then that'll be a major competitive advantage.
Third on our list is offer amenities. So build to rent, they do it bigger and better, right? They have gyms, they have coffee shops. So convert your garage into a gym. No, you'll be pleased to hear we're not crazy. We don't think you should do anything like that. But you can think creatively. Now, here are some ideas, and I'm not going to say they're all good ideas. But if you think, okay, coffee is a way to my tenants' hearts, and you found that most of your tenants love a good cup of coffee, then maybe you can put a good coffee machine in there and sign them up to a coffee bean subscription. It's something that won't cost you a lot, but would make you stand out. Some other ideas I've seen it implemented by landlords is offering speedy internet for free. That's attractive for 2 reasons. One, the obvious, they get free internet, but the second, also, they don't have the hassle of getting it set up. And as a tenant, that would be the one that would bother me most. So free internet is something you could possibly consider. You could do things like free Netflix as well. If you've got a garden, then you could say, well, we throw a gardening service into the mix. Now, that might not sound as crazy as it seems, because if you do have a garden and you're worried that your tenants might not look after it properly, that's a way of making sure that your garden is maintained. Even if you just do it once a month, it may not cost you that much. Or if you're a more hands-on landlord, maybe it's you that turns up and cuts the grass. Garden service sounds very fancy. They don't need to know that it's actually going to be you turning up each and every month with a lawnmower. The idea here is to think creatively. And I know there's going to be some people listening who are going to have their backs up a little bit to this one and go, well, that's all going to cost me. That's going to eat into my profits. But remember, the whole point of this episode is that build to rent attracts higher rents and they have fewer voids. And by offering amenities doesn't mean that your profits are going to be wiped out. You may be able to increase your rent. And even after increasing that rent, you take a small hit, you may end up having tenants stay for longer. So actually, financially, you end up better off. So don't immediately rule out offering amenities as an option. Now, of course, this applies to build to rent as well. Where you are in the country will determine what you can offer. If you've got rents of £500 a month, I think it's probably a bit grand to be offering coffee services, free internet and Netflix. But if you're in an area that attracts more premium rent, maybe that is cost effective. But it doesn't mean at the lower end of the market, you can't be creative. Spend that time just writing a list of ideas, and that could make enough difference for you to stand out in the marketplace. Oh, I love our portfolio app, and we're on a mission to open up the benefits of property investment to as many people as possible. And we are doing that with the mobile app Portfolio. Remember, Portfolio provides what we believe is a completely new way to access the potential benefits of property investment, while feeling just as involved as if you owned a buy-to-let. You can find out more about investing through Portfolio at portfolio.co.uk.
So we've got pets, flexible tenancies and amenities so far. The fourth trick that you can steal from build to rent is high-end furnishings. Again, depends on your market as to what you're going to offer. It might be completely inappropriate for you to have a £3,000 sofa, but what you can do is pitch yourself just 1 or 2 degrees higher than what's normal for whichever market you're in. So if you are in a city centre charging premium rents, maybe that does mean super high end. But even in the mid-market, if you go just a little bit better than everyone else, it could make a big difference. The same goes for general interior design. And again, in some markets, it could be overkill. But what if you spent a couple of £1,000s on an interior designer and they came up with something that, without being ridiculously expensive, made the property stand out? That's going to make such a difference in your ability to attract the best tenants who are going to be willing to pay the highest rents, which could potentially boost your returns way in excess of the costs and mean that whenever the property does become vacant, you've got people queuing up to take it, which means no void periods, and you'll be able to take your pick of the tenants and end up with people who hopefully are going to cause you no issues and make your life much easier. Most rental properties look the same, so it doesn't take much to differentiate yourself. This is something that the best build-to-rent developments do really well, and it's something you can do too.
Number 5 on our list is deliver a high level of service and use tech to deliver that service. So many build-to-rent developments will have apps that the tenants can use, and the service they receive is normally of a really high standard. But that doesn't mean you can't get in on the action. So in your adverts, you could advertise a tenant concierge service, which could be just you on WhatsApp, but you could give them a number, tell them it's your property management concierge number, and it could be you on the other end of that WhatsApp answering their questions and helping them out when they're stuck. It's just taking something that many landlords do already, but making it sound a lot more glamorous. Other ways you can use tech to stand out from the crowd, level up your tenants' experiences, or use things like DocuSign. Nobody likes printing off contracts and then signing them. It's just a hassle, especially when DocuSign exists. It's just going to make their life a lot easier when they need to sign any contracts with you. The obvious one, the tenancy agreement. If they can do it in seconds through their phone or computer rather than having to print it off and sign it, well then you're immediately setting the bar higher than what a lot of other people will be doing. And you can take it further again with technology. You can use Ring doorbell services, so they feel like they're getting a value add there. You can use smart meters. So next time you get a boiler, you could get a service like Hive, for example. And again, all these little things start to add up to be something that makes you stand out. So you don't need to go and build your own app. You can use existing technology that's out there and really impress tenants and deliver that higher level of service. So that's 5, Rob, but we have 2 more. What's number 6?
Yes, we do. Number 6 is bills included. So another way in which build to rent is attractive is that you make one payment that covers everything. It's just so much easier for you as a resident. You don't have to move in and set up your electricity and your gas and your broadband and everything else and deal with all that paperwork and deal with all the bills every month when they come in. You make one payment and that is done. I spent years living in Airbnbs and it was amazing because I paid Airbnb once a month and didn't have to think about anything else. It's incredible not having that mental overhead. And people are only getting more averse to hassle over time. So if you can include all the bills, so someone moves in, it's all set up, they just pay you and that's it, that is a big selling point. Now, I know that means that you are bearing a significant amount of risk, especially at a time when energy bills are so expensive, it might not work. Not all the ideas we're talking about are going to be appropriate for everyone, but if you just pick one of them, it will give you a competitive advantage. Maybe in your market, including the bills doesn't make sense. But maybe it does. If it does, in your case, then that's something that a lot of people are going to find very appealing. So, Rob, just one more to go.
Yes, number 7 on our list is pitch yourself at the top of the market. So if you've implemented even just some of what we've listed off today, shout about it and make your listing more premium. If you do use high-end furnishings or interiors, make sure you've got the pictures to show them off. And make sure your advert echoes that this is a property that is better than everything else on the market. Because if you follow the majority of those 7 steps, it will be. So market it that way. Just like we said earlier, use WhatsApp and call it a concierge service, make sure you list all that off. If you're going to the effort of doing this, then make sure you shout about it, because there are lots of people in the market who want the best. And there'll be lots of people in the market that want the best, but not live in a build-to-rent facility. So if you can offer a near-level experience, but in a type of property that they want to rent, that isn't available to them in build-to-rent, you can enjoy all those wonderful things as a landlord because your tenant is enjoying all those wonderful things that you're delivering. It's a great trade-off. So if you've gone to the effort of implementing the majority of the first 6, make sure you do the 7th thing, which is marketing yourself appropriately. Don't miss step 7 if you've implemented some of the first 6 steps, because you could be leaving money on the table and those higher paying tenants might not be able to find you.
Rob, I think you just used the key word in there, which is experience. What build-to-rent developments do so well is they create an amazing experience for their target market, and then they market that experience really effectively. When you're looking at their marketing material, it doesn't feel like you're just trying to choose between commodity options, which is what you normally get when you're looking through Rightmove, which is like, okay, what can I afford? What's cheap? What looks all right? I'll go and see that. When you're looking at build to rent, you really get pulled into a vision of a lifestyle that they're creating for you. So how can you replicate that? How can you do that through what you actually offer, which is steps 1 to 6, and how you present it, which is number 7. It doesn't mean that you have to replicate the experience of build to rent, because your tenant type might not be the same. They might be paying different amounts. They might be living in different places. They might want different things. So figure out what your ideal tenant does want. Come up with a product that gives that to them. Even if it's only 1 or 2 rungs higher than everyone else, that's plenty. And then make sure that you effectively sell that lifestyle that you've created. So hopefully now, if we've done our job, you're not seeing build to rent as a threat. You're seeing it as a potential source of inspiration. And if you take that inspiration and do something with it, just putting in that bit of extra effort will leave you in a really good place.
So it's time for Hub Extra, the part of the show where we like to give you more. We just want to pack in loads and loads of value. And here's our efforts this week. Rob, you've got a resource that is completely new to me. So I'm going to let you deliver a high level of service here while I sit back and listen to what you're offering.
So this is an app and website called Readwise. So if you're a big reader and you take notes from what you read, you might find this useful because it allows you to really easily capture highlights and notes on what you're reading and pull them all into one place. So if you do reading online or you do reading on a Kindle, then you can make highlights and those highlights all get pulled into Readwise. Then what it does, which is really cool, is it gives you what it calls a daily review, where it chooses 5 or 6 of your highlights and randomly displays them to you. And that is a really useful feature because how many of us make highlights when we're reading? Probably most of us, I'd say. How many of us go back and actually review those highlights? Probably a much smaller percentage. So taking a minute to review a small selection of them every day can be really useful. And you could end up with the right idea just popping back into your life at the right time. But the really cool feature that I wanted to highlight was the fact that you can actually do this with physical books as well. So if you're reading a book on paper, what it allows you to do is just take a photo of the book. It then digitally recognises what the text is. You can choose the relevant part and save that into Readwise as well. So that for me is the real killer feature, because lots of people just prefer reading it on paper rather than digitally. But then if you make highlights in a book, how are you ever going to review those? What if you don't have the book with you? Being able to just snap a photo and pull it into a digital system just makes it so much more accessible. So this isn't free, there is a monthly cost. If you're just a casual reader or you read mostly for fun or you take in most of your information in audio, then it's not really going to work. But if you are quite a serious reader and you want to do something with what you read, then Readwise is a tool that's worth checking out.
And make sure you check us out on Tuesday because we will be back with Ask Rob and Rob. And of course, we'll be back with the main event, the Property Podcast, next Thursday. So until then, take care, have fun, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.